Shabbat Shalom, friends. Wonderful to be with you as always, as we sit into Shabbat together, drawing inspiration from this week's Parsha, which is Parshat Tetzaveh. This Parsha begins with one of my favorite images in the Torah, an image that has felt potently connected to my experience of Jewish life since I attended synagogue as a child. The image of the Ner Tamid, that always burning candle at the entrance to the tabernacle that has remained an important symbol in our holy places. Perhaps you know what I'm talking about if you also go to a synagogue. And the Parsha goes on to describe in great detail the consecration of Aaron and the priests, the Kohanim, and their initiation into priestly duties. Just as Aaron and the Kohanim, his children, serve the Israelites as priests, our tradition teaches that the Jewish people as a whole are like priests unto the world, bringing light unto the nations. So what is the nature of this Ner Tamid, this always burning light? And how is it connected to priesthood, this invitation, this initiation that has to do with who we are as a people? So I want to share with you two main interpretations in our commentaries about the nature of this light. Rashi suggests that the Ner Tamid means regularly lit, meaning that it's routinely kindled. So the value and the essence of this light has to do with the priest's repetition, their devotion to the practice as they keep it lit, as they return to it again and again. And Nachmanides understood it as continually burning, so a light that is eternal and ever present, recalling the menorah of temple times. In the Talmud, this light is associated with the light of Torah, of wisdom and understanding. It's also often associated with divine presence, with the Shekhinah, the divine light that leads the people and guides them through the wilderness. And in mindfulness practice, consciousness itself is often described as a light, right? When we are not present, when we're kind of just moving through the motions of habituated patterns, almost like we're sleepwalking through life, it can feel as if we're in the dark. We can't quite see clearly, or the world can lose its luster, its aliveness, it's that sense of holiness. But when we are aware, when we are awake and fully present, we can begin to see things as they are. Our perception becomes clarified in this light of awareness. The world is illuminated. We can begin to sense and appreciate the holiness, the divine essence of each being that we encounter. And an important quality of this light that I really want to invite in our practice today is its ever-present and unchanging nature. So awareness is not another experience. It's not another cloud that passes by in the big sky of the mind. It's the sky itself. It's that space that holds it all. And it's always here, closer than close. So close we can easily miss it, right? In our practice, we're basically remembering that this awareness is here, moment by moment, a space that we can always return to. And we're cultivating our capacity to be this light, to begin to identify with that space, that ever-present space. As we do so, we can loosen our grip a little bit on all that is transient, all of our attachments or our aversions. We can rest more in what is unchanging. I heard a beautiful story recently from the wonderful teacher, Tara Brach. She teaches meditation. She told a story about a woman, a student of hers, who was struggling with failed relationships, one after the other, failed romantic relationships, where she would enter a relationship, but at some point would become so seized with anxiety that it would end, that she would actually start to act in a way that would cause it to end. And she started practicing mindfulness and discovered that underneath the anxiety was a profound loneliness. That's what it was covering up. And with her mindfulness practice, she began to actually just be with that loneliness, to hold herself in that loneliness, to say to that part of herself, I'm here. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And over time, began to realize that she had capacity to be with that experience and was able to, I start to identify more with the part of herself that was holding herself, that loving, aware, steady part of herself, than the loneliness itself. And it became less scary, and she was able to be with it, and eventually was able to re-enter relationships with more steadiness, more awareness, more capacity to be with what was there. And so we can do that too. That's what we're doing in our practice, just as the Kohanim are instructed to keep this light everlasting. We too are called upon to maintain this light of awareness, this light of loving presence within the sanctuary of our own beings. And in doing so, we can shine that light out into the world. We can help one another remember that light within ourselves. We can bring Kedusha, we can bring holiness into the world. Thich Nhat Hanh, the beloved Vietnamese Zen master of blessed memory, he said, we have a lamp inside of us. The oil of that lamp is our breathing, our steps, and our peaceful smile. Our practice is to light up the lamp. I'll just repeat that one more time. We have a lamp inside of us. The oil of that lamp is our breathing, our steps, and our peaceful smile. Our practice is to light up the lamp. And so with that, I want to invite you to settle into a posture in your body that will be supportive of mindful presence. You can close your eyes if that feels available to you, or softly focus your gaze on the floor. Inviting the body to relax and soften. And at the same time, feeling that sense of wakefulness, alertness, presence, here-ness. Inviting the attention to rest here in the present moment. In this space of awareness. Perhaps resting the mind and the breath, or the body. More fully arriving into awareness of what is here in this present moment. And as thoughts arise, feelings, sensations, just notice, become aware of what is here. And hold it in that light of awareness. No need to fix or control anything. No need to react to what is arising. Just allowing whatever is here to arise and pass away, all on its own. Like weather moving across the sky. And we don't need to follow each cloud, but simply relax again into that big sky mind, that seat of awareness that holds it all. And with all that is arising in your experience, whatever emotion, sensation, or thought, is there something unchanging beneath the surface? Can we meet and hold whatever it is that arises with loving presence? Can we find ourselves within that ever-present light of awareness? And can we rest in that light, knowing our experience as it emerges with clarity? Noticing where the mind is. Returning again to presence. To that space of awareness that holds this experience. And for the last couple minutes of our practice, I invite you to imagine in your mind's eye a gently glowing light within you, steady and ever present through all of the ebbs and flows. A light of wisdom, a light of awareness, of compassion. You might imagine that light expanding beyond your sense of self to ripple out into the world. Touch those that you are close to, in community with. Expanding beyond your community. You might imagine that light growing and growing. To touch the whole world, this greater whole. With its warmth. We'll end our practice with a poem by Daniel Baylis. You are but a collection of atoms working together in temporary harmony before being dispersed back into the universe. Your earthly task is to help those atoms radiate. Imagine the simplicity. You need not achieve anything, but gently glow. Imagine the simplicity. You need not achieve anything, but gently glow. Thank you for your presence and for your practice. And as we enter Shabbat, as we light the Shabbat candles, may you remember that light, the light of our own hearts and souls, the light of our own love, and that unchanging presence that is always here for us, holding us deep within us and around us. And can we bring more of that light into the world? Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Beautiful teaching and practice. Friends, let's turn now to Mourner's Kaddish, to Kaddish Yatom. If you're in the period of mourning, if you're marking a yahrzeit, the anniversary of a death, or if it's your practice to say Kaddish at this time, you're invited to unmute, to rise in body or in spirit or both. And the community will join in responding and in loving support. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Merabah, She'alma,
Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimrama, Kuya Aseh Shalom. Yokal Yisrael Nimru, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. May their memories be for a blessing. Thank you to everybody who wrote names in the chat. And if you'd like to include other names of those you're remembering today. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for your teaching. Thank you, Sarah Nesson, for sponsoring today's sit in memory of Jim. Thank you, Kat, as always, for holding the tech side of our gathering so skillfully. For those who are leaving now, may be blessed with good health and a really beautiful and peaceful Shabbat. And for those who want to stay on, we'll spend another 15 minutes together. You're invited to put questions in the chat. It's helpful if you write the word question in bold so I can see it and share that with Rebecca. So maybe I'll start with a question, Rebecca. You gave us such beautiful imagery to work with, drawing from the Torah portion, and those two beautiful commentaries, different ways of understanding what the tamid, the always or the constantly, is in relationship to this light, this quality of light. And I sort of hold the image of like imagining the priests how hard they must have worked to keep the light burning all the time, that it needed to be a constant task. And so you were lifting that up, and also lifting up the light that is always present, that we just that we just need to turn to be in relationship with. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, in your practice, the relationship between effort, and you use that beautiful phrase a number of times, resting into that shining, ever-present light. So can you speak to the dynamic between effort and releasing effort in practice?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. It's such an important one. I'm reminded of when I was a student at Pardes, the pluralistic yeshiva in Jerusalem. There was a class on spirituality called Striving for the Divine. And I remember talking to the teacher and I was like, well, what about relaxing into the divine? That's also needed to really balance what we're trying to do here. And I've heard the metaphor also used often of like a string that you're wanting to tune on a guitar. So if it's too loose, it's not going to make any noise. And if it's too tight, it's going to break. And the effort required in our practice can be conceived of in a similar way, that we don't want to be too rigid, or we're going to be striving so hard that we maybe miss the point of the awareness that is already here. And at the same time, with no effort at all, it's potentially unlikely that we're really going to be able to cultivate something. The efforting is part of what helps us to access that awareness, even as it is already here and ever present. So there is something kind of paradoxical in that. And I love that metaphor of a guitar string, because it really is an art. It really is an art. And this parsha also speaks a lot about beauty, describes in great detail the priestly vestments. And, when we can start to think of our practice and our spirituality as an art, as something to relate to as if it's a dance, or we're engaging in music or painting, I think it opens up then a space for a lot of wisdom, actually, to come through, that has to do with relating to aliveness, and that creative spirit that is also so essential, as in terms of like what we're really connecting to in our practice. And just the last thing I'll say is that I remember once I was on a retreat and I was kind of not wrestling with, but I was realizing, awareness is always here. Awareness is always here. Even if I'm totally being mindless, actually, and not taking care of myself, awareness is still here. And yet, with that awareness that is ever present, part of what's so wonderful about it is that it helps me to see the impact of my actions. And it helps me to notice that when I effort to take care of myself and to keep showing up and to keep cultivating my capacity to be aware of that awareness, there's a loving impact. There's a beneficial impact that is in service to my well-being. And so the well-being of those that I am in connection to, that's what I kind of began to realize. And so, yes, the awareness is always there. The awareness is ever present. And the practice takes effort. It does take some effort. Yeah.
Beautiful. Before I ask another question, I just want to respond to Deborah's question in the chat. Is there a link to join Rebecca's Purim Joy series? Kat, if you're able to, would you please put that in the chat? The series will take place during this time, all of next week, with a little bit more expansiveness. The teaching will take us to 1:15, and then we'll have time for questions. So if you're able to, I really encourage you to get to be with Rebecca's teaching and practice all week. And of course, it will be posted on YouTube if you can't come in person or want to listen again. I just see another question. Let me scroll up. Elizabeth is asking, connecting with the ever-present divine light within me brings me such a sense of comfort and stability. I'm trying to teach my children, pre-teen and teen, to go inward and find this light, especially when they're struggling. Do you have any suggestions for helping kids develop inner awareness, especially when they're bombarded by external distractions?
I love that question. I actually was just when you mentioned the joy series and the playfulness series next week, I was thinking a little bit about my work with children. I taught mindfulness to kids, pre-K all the way up to teenagers for several years. And that's part of my inspiration around really wanting to bring forth this Torah of playfulness as spiritual practice, because what I found was that it's the exact same practice, it's the exact same teachings when you're working with children, but it tends to be more simple and more playful. And then when I was working with kids and their parents or educators, I realized, oh, this is good medicine for adults. Like, we kind of tend to overcomplicate things, actually. And the simplicity and the playfulness works just as well for us, especially because it like really speaks to the inner child that we all have. That often needs a lot of care and a lot of love. And so one thing I can say in response to that question and this idea of that internal space or that inner light that is ever present, a metaphor that I have used a lot in my work with kids is kind of this idea of the quiet place inside. So the idea is that even when so much is going on around us, totally feeling crazy in our minds, or the world around us is chaotic, no matter what, there's always a quiet place deep inside and we can always access it. And the metaphor of an anchor works really well. So if you think of waves on the surface of water, the waves might be really choppy, they might be really calm, it might be really stormy. The weather's always changing. We can't rely on it, right? But if you go all the way down to the bottom of the ocean, how is it on the bottom of the ocean? It's peaceful, it's calm, regardless of what's happening on top. So the anchor is what helps us to find that place. And then the anchor, of course, is whatever it is that we're anchoring our mind to in a gentle way. So it could be the breath, it could be the body, it could be, sounds, it could be words that we say in a repetitious way. And so that's one example of a metaphor that might be more accessible for a child than like an inner light.
So helpful. And I think it's so clear from the ways that a lot of young people are struggling, that the distractions and the sort of habituated behaviors of always staying busy is really creating challenge for their ability to feel settled, to know their goodness and their grounding. And I want to take that image for me as well as I think what can be really helpful of a sense of what's underneath the waves, the stirring, that it's not about erasing or calling the waves bad, but actually being able to access something that is deeply supportive. So I'm really resonating with that image. And the ways that it doesn't hold judgment, but actually offers something beneath that can support and sustain. Thanks for that. There's another question that I just saw from, I think, Gail. Let me just scroll up. Gail is asking, I really have trouble thinking of spirituality, religion as an art. I can see using art to enhance my practice, but I cannot wrap my hands around thinking of it as an art. Could you explain that?
Yeah, this question's very dear to my heart as an artist. what I mean, I can share just from my own experience. Some of what I experience in mindfulness practice is in that space of, in cultivating the space to begin to perceive reality more clearly, and the space where the space of equanimity, of being able to be with what is and then choose how to respond. Part of what is cultivated and kind of liberated through that is the creative spirit, meaning the realization of how much choice we actually do have to co-create our world through our expression, through our words, certainly through our actions. And so then the question becomes, well, what impact do I want to make on this world? What does it mean to be in relationship with other beings, other co-creators of this world in ways that will enhance and create more beauty, more harmony? What is it that really nourishes the heart and the soul? And so often what it is that we wake up to also is the beauty that is ever present, even in very subtle ways in the world around us, even in very simple ways that we often miss. And I know for myself, when I really am holding the awareness of that kind of creative power and creative responsibility, I feel the calling to contribute to a more beautiful world. And that kind of orientation that has to do with beauty and harmony in relationship to everyone else who's participating in the symphony is one that, to me, has to do with wisdom also. There's something there that relationally seems to work when just the metaphor of harmonizing together. And so through my art practices, through painting, through creative writing, those are practices that help me understand how to do that, how to relate to this process of being alive with the awareness of beauty, with the awareness of harmony, with the spaciousness that can allow grace to happen, that can allow that creative spirit to really come alive, wherein, something seems to start to flow through us that perhaps, it's like nature, the aliveness itself flowing through us that has its own intelligence. And this is what can happen with our spiritual practice. In a way, I think, we can look at, even when we go to synagogue, for instance, if we go to synagogue, part of what is so uplifting to the spirit, part of what really brings us into that awareness of divine presence is the beauty of all of us singing together, the artistry of our ancient liturgy, right? That's what is so nourishing to the spirit. So I think it's something for each of us to explore, this relationship between creativity and art and our devotional practice and spirituality and how we gather in community. But in the Jewish tradition as well, there is a real value on the beauty of the mitzvot. So it's not just about performing the commandments or the mitzvot, it's about really making them beautiful, and that is something that brings out our aliveness and nourishes our soul.
What a beautiful place to pause, nourishing our souls in all that's alive, and in the artistry and pleasure and joy and wisdom of it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Just to clarify, I see some confusion about the week-long intensive. It will be the link that you get in your inbox for the daily sit. So there isn't a special thing that you have to sign up for. Just come here again and you'll be able to hear Rebecca's intensive next week, the Purim teaching, and we'll be together for that. Thank you again. Thank you, everybody. Wishing you all a radiant, creative, beautiful Shabbat.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mary.